Hey, how's it going? Big Al here with another around the house tip. Today we're going to be uninstalling this Honeywell FOCUSPro 5000 thermostat, and we're going to install a Nest Generation 3 programmable thermostat. Upon unboxing, you're going to find the thermostat itself. It comes with a nice screwdriver. It's got the backing plate for installation as well as the mounting plate. It's also got an additional plate if you're going to be mounting to an electrical box. And if you notice inside some of the documentation, there's also a spot with stickers for the different wires that are in the wall once we uninstall. And we'll be able to use those to identify which one of our wires are if we so choose to do so. So let's go ahead and get started first by turning off the electricity at the power box. Okay, and a key step here is to turn off the power to the thermostat, which is typically, but not always, you'll have to look at your own wiring and understand what you're doing to the furnace. You might also have AC units, you might have separate ones for the furnace. It might be both. You can turn them all off if that's what you feel is most appropriate. Again, what you want to do is just turn those into the off position, and you'll be able to indicate this and know that you've got it in the right spot. If you go back upstairs to the thermostat and there is no power, the only thing that might fool you is if there's batteries in the thermostat itself as a backup. So if you remove the batteries and there's no power, then you'll know that you've done it correctly. This is a key step because if you do uninstall the thermostat and you do not turn off and shut off the right circuit breaker, you could cross the wires and blow a fuse inside of the furnace or wherever the power wiring is. And no matter what kind of diagnosis you do with Nest and their information, you won't be able to get it fixed until you fix that fuse, which may not be in this fuse box because it's a low voltage fuse, sometimes a 3-amp fuse, and it's placed inside the furnace itself. So very important to get the right one turned off. And again, the indicator is that there is no power to the thermostat that we're replacing. Now I happen to know I've done it right and turned off the right circuit breaker because I removed the batteries and there is no power. If you want to go the extra step, you can use a voltmeter and test to make sure, or you can also check just to make sure there's no power at the circuit. So to remove this style of thermostat, it's pretty simple. You just lift up from the bottom, and then there's 2 tabs at the top. So if you just wiggle a little bit, you'll notice that they'll come off right there. So we'll go ahead and place this to the side. Now, depending on the setup that you have at your house, there's going to be a number of different wires. Some are for cooling, some are for heating, some are common, some are the ground or the fan, excuse me. And so you're going to want to do a few things. First of all, take a picture of your existing setup, because if the need arises, and I have had a Nest go bad, you may want to reinstall the old thermostat. Make sure that you take note of exactly the setup before uninstalling these wires. Also, you can use the stickers that Nest has provided to place on each of these wires so that you don't forget when you put them on the new thermostat. This is a pretty straightforward setup. There aren't as many wires as I've had in some of the past with a heat pump and such. Single stage cool, single stage heat. And so I'm going to use the Nest provided screwdriver, loosen these. I'll remove each of these wires, take off the 2 screws, and I'll be able to pull this off, and then we'll be able to connect this to the proper backing plate when we install the Nest. All right, so the old thermostat is off, and I've gone ahead and labeled all the wires. You might notice I had to improvise a little bit with some of the stickers because I had worn out some of the stickers before I got them on there. But nonetheless, whether you take a picture or use the stickers provided by Nest, you can label the wires and know how to hook up the new thermostat. So the next step is to bunch the wires together so that we can go ahead and get the Nest plate on there. Now, if you're not doing it to a electrical box, this is all you're going to need, and it's going to mount right into the wall. And don't worry about previous mounting holes at this point. If you happen to have them, that's great. If not, don't worry. The biggest thing is just maybe you get lucky like I am here and able to cover up the non-painted areas. And then as you can see, I've already got the holes ready, because what's going to happen is the backing plate will come on next. So we will slide that on through too. It has a pretty nice built-in level. So you'll want to get that lined up. And then it has 2 provided screws. So you'll get all this lined up. You can even use, if you want to go an additional level and make sure that this backing mounting plate is also level, put the 2 screws directly into the drywall. This thing is really light, and the mounting screws themselves are quite large. So there's really no need for anchors, in my opinion. I've never had a problem, and this thing seems to be sturdy and hard as a rock. But if you want to go for that extra bit, you could. They don't supply them, but you could get them yourself. But I'm just going to screw those directly into the drywall. And then the next step will be, after that, is to push down on these tabs and push in the corresponding wires. So in our case, I have the yellow, which is Y1. I have the W, which is W1. I've got the C, blue, or excuse me, I grabbed the wrong one there. The blue, common, that's for power to the thermostat. That's going to be right here. Now, in my case, I have a single red wire, and Nest has in their documentation that you can go out to their site and it will tell you what to do if you have a question about what a wire does. In this case, according to their documentation, if you only have a single red power wire, you can put it to either the RC or the RH. So I'm going to go ahead and do it to the RH down there. And then finally, I've got the green wire, which is G, and that goes over to here. Now, one note, if you have an older house, these may not be color-coded correctly. Don't always assume that the color of the wire is going to match the letter. Whatever was installed, if you had a working thermostat, it is absolutely critical, an important step to not worry about what the color is, but label them according to the previous installation. That will be the easiest route to get your Nest successfully installed. So I'm going to go ahead and mount it, put the screws in, and push these wires into their corresponding spots, and then we'll be almost done with the installation. All right, let's take a look at our progress here. So I've gone ahead and installed the 2 mounting screws, and if you can notice from the level, that is level. And for just a bit of extra, I went ahead and made sure that the backing plate mounting bracket is also level. Now, a quick tip. One of the steps you're going to have to do before we finish installation is to tuck all these wires flush in this little recess here. And most of the steps will say, oh, just push them back. Easier said than done. These wires are a little hard and a little stubborn. So one tip that I recommend is you'll notice that in my installation, I have a couple of unused wires in the back. The very first thing that I did was go ahead and push those back as far as I could and get those out of the way first. And then I also got these organized and kind of free on their own. As I place them into their individual places on the new backing plate, I'm going to carefully try to push them back in here to this recess. One of the things in the several times I've installed these is the very first time I just go boop, 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 and pop them in. And then what happens is these things stick out too far and you try to install the Nest flat and flush and it sticks out from the side. So very important to kind of get organized with your wires first. They are a bit delicate, so don't be too rough or you'll actually rub the insulation off. If that does happen, there's usually enough slack that you could work with it and cut back a little bit and get a new exposed wire. But just get organized with your wires before you push them into their spots on the Nest backing plate. All right, at this point, I've installed each of the wires in their corresponding spots. Again, all you have to do is press down here and slide the wire in. It'll indicate that it's been pushed in successfully by these tabs being depressed on each of the locations that you inserted a wire. So the next step is to go ahead and install the Nest thermostat, and you'll see on the back that this will align with the bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and at the top here, and it should just snap on. There, we're ready to go. Let's go down to the circuit breaker, turn it back on, and come back upstairs, and we'll see the power. All right, back at the thermostat, gonna go ahead and turn on the corresponding ones that I had turned off. I turned off, I've actually got furnace upstairs and downstairs, and just for good measure, I turned them both off. Probably not necessary, but I wanted to have extra precaution. Let's go upstairs and check out the Nest thermostat. All right, here's the Nest thermostat. Everything's installed correctly. I'm not going to go through the menus to set it up. There are plenty of tutorials online and documentation on Nest on how to do this, but it's pretty intuitive. Going through the menus, setting your language, location, getting it connected to the internet, obviously the main feature of it, and you are set up. If there are any error codes, you're going to want to go back through. Nest does have very good support. You can actually call the number and they will help you out. Otherwise, this completes the installation of changing out your old thermostat to the Nest. Hope it helped you. Thanks.